Right, everybody. I know JavaScript's a little overwhelming right now. It is difficult. Just stick with it. You'll get it. I'm going to start this project for you and just show you a couple of tips that I use um, when I'm doing this. But here's the project on GitHub. I have forked it over already. It's in my account. I have cloned it onto my machine, and I have opened it in VS Code. So I'm in the directory. I'm going to run an npm install, and that's going to install the npm package manager on this machine, all of the packages that are in this project. And again, you really don't need to know what this does yet. And then I'm going to run npm run test watch. And now my tests run, and I can see them here. For these tests, it's a lot of scrolling. I only have one test running. It's the example function that adds two numbers. It's the one that's already done. I will open this up for you right here. This is now testing and says it's good. I'm going to move this over to the side, to the right, because I kind of like it there better for this purpose. Now I'm going to do number one. So number one is to make a person object. The instructions are not all that clear if you ask me, especially if you're not too familiar with JavaScript at all or anything. But it basically says this takes three items as arguments: an ID, a name, and an email, and makes an object with an ID, name, and email. So I know there's going to be three arguments in here: an ID, a name, and an email. And then I know it's going to create an object, so it's going to return an object, and that object is going to have a name, an ID. I'm sorry, it's going to have an ID, a name, and an email. And these are key value pairs that are going to be the ID that is put in, a name that is put in, and an email that is input. Let me save that, and we will see now by scrolling down if that test solved. And it did. That makes an object of the right shape now, and now I have two tests passing. So that seemed to work really well. I want to talk about what's really happening here because I get confused with ID, ID, ID. What's being really passed in here is some ID. Could be any ID, 1, 5, 10, and it's going to be some name. It could be any name, Veronica, Alexander, whatever, and some email. So I'm typing in some ID. These need to match what was typed in. Some name. It really doesn't matter what these are. What this is basically saying is whatever is typed in here is going to be here. Whatever is typed in here is going to be here. Whatever typed in here is going to be here. If I save that, then I still have two tests passing. But if this is like different than what is here, then it's not going to be passing. So now if we scroll down, we'll see that I only have the one test passing and only one test passing, and my make person object test does not pass. So oftentimes you'll see instead of some ID, some name, and some email, you'll just see ID. Oh, sorry. Name and email, which is an ID, a name, and an email. One thing that I really like to do when I'm coding, especially in JavaScript, is in HTML and CSS, we drew a box around everything to visualize what was happening. And in JavaScript, we're going to simply console.log ID. Okay, so we'll just console.log ID. We'll save it, and we'll come over here, and we'll see what prints to our console. There we go. So I had a 1 print to my console. So let's console log name and see what prints. So I've done that. Let me scroll down to where I've run the test again. And this time I have Luke being print out. And then I'm going to console.log email. And let's see what happens. So I can console.log that, and I get one Luke and Luke at luke.com. Basically, you don't. This is coming from the tests. I can actually look at the test file. This is something where you guys don't know much about a test file yet, but basically it's testing ID 1, name Luke, email Luke at luke.com. And so maybe I want to create my make person object. Down here I've made the object, and now I could console.log my make person object, which is now this object that this function makes. So now I should be able to see something like this: ID 1, name Luke, email Luke at luke.com. And let's see if that works. Okay, it did not. Let me see if we log it here, if that's any different. No, it is not. Okay. Let me do it this way, where perhaps I'm going to set up an object as a variable that I'm going to call my object. And now I have an ID in this, a name, and an email. And then I can simply console.log my object. And now we'll see what logs to the console. And here's my object right there. It logged. But my test didn't pass because I did not return my object. So that is another way to get this test to pass. And I really like console logging things. Once you solve the problem, then you could actually comment out your console.logs, and it cleans up your code a little bit so you don't have a bunch of items coming through being logged. But now I have 2 tests passing, and the make person object test passes. So let's do get name. Yeah, let's do get name. So here we're passing in a name, and see, it takes a name property and returns a string that basically returns this. So it returns a string, hello, my name is. And in JavaScript, there's 2 ways to return strings. So we can just return the name, like so. This is the space, and this is our name. Let's save that and see if that works. And that does not work. It does not pass the test. And there's a couple reasons. So maybe we do console.log name, and let's just see what if we can console log anything when we console log name. And it actually console logged name. Console logged a whole object, but we're only wanting name. So possibly what we want to do is we want to console.log name.name, meaning it is the object is passed in, and we only want the name of the object, right? So save that, and that now passes. What's really happening is I shouldn't pass in name. I should pass in a object that is a person. I'm going to call that person object, and then I'm going to console log person object.name, and we'll return person object.name. That should then console.log our name, Luke. It only console.logs the name. I could console.log the entire person, right? Console.log person object. And see what that console.logs now. I'm logging the person object, or the object that is a person, and then the name. And that is why that is passing. Now that that is passing, I can go ahead and uncomment those and save that again. And now I have 3 tests passing, and I can move on to make smart person.